When the envelope arrived, I felt a flutter of excitement, the kind that always preceded milestones I wanted to share with my family. But that flutter quickly twisted into a pit in my stomach the moment I saw my father's smirk as he picked up the invitation with one lazy finger. "A military wedding? Really? Who wears that?" His voice carried that casual derision that had haunted me since childhood. My mother glanced at him nervously but said nothing, as always. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the card, recalling the countless birthdays and graduations where my accomplishments had been met with silence, while my younger brother was showered with attention, praise, and extravagant gifts. Every medal, every award, every late-night sacrifice I had poured into service seemed to vanish the moment he opened his mouth. I imagined the wedding day ahead and felt the weight of being constantly underestimated. How could they see me in this uniform and not recognize who I truly was? The envelope now felt heavy in my hands, symbolizing years of neglect, favoritism, and a family blind to my worth. Even as I tried to summon excitement, a lingering anxiety settled in, reminding me that this celebration might only magnify their scorn rather than acknowledge my achievement. It was a mix of anticipation and dread that made my chest tighten, a familiar feeling that had shadowed me for decades, now crystallized into one moment that would set the stage for everything to come. I remember the first time I realized my father's approval wasn't something I could earn. I was 8, clutching a science fair ribbon, my cheeks flushed with pride. I ran into the living room, eager to show him, expecting a smile, a nod, something that said, "I see you." Instead, he glanced at it dismissively, muttered something about wasting time, and turned back to the newspaper. My brother, on the other hand, could announce a mediocre grade, and suddenly the house was filled with applause, phone calls to relatives, and gifts piled at his feet. That pattern followed me through school. Every honor, every achievement, a whisper in the wind, while my sibling basked in attention, trophies, and praise that felt undeserved. When I joined the military, I thought perhaps that uniform would finally command respect. I imagined him standing tall, acknowledging the discipline, the dedication, the sacrifices that had shaped me. But even then, my accomplishments were fodder for his jokes, the subtle smirks, the backhanded compliments that stung more than outright insults. The loneliness of it all settled deep in my chest, a constant reminder that no matter how high I climbed, I was still the shadowed child, the overlooked one, yearning for recognition that never came. Frustration simmered alongside a burning desire to prove that I was more than the sum of his dismissals, more than the sibling he preferred, more than the invisible daughter who deserved to be seen. Every memory, every slight fed into a quiet, growing resolve to one day command the respect he had always withheld, to turn every past humiliation into the foundation for a triumph he could not ignore. The days leading up to the wedding were filled with meticulous preparation, each detail reflecting the discipline and precision I had honed in the military, from polishing my boots until they gleamed to ironing my uniform so that every crease mirrored the sharpness I demanded of myself. I poured my focus into creating an image of strength and dignity. Every adjustment, every measured step, reminded me of the countless hours of training, the missions completed, and the sacrifices that had shaped who I had become. Yet, even as I ensured perfection in my appearance and the ceremony, my mind kept returning to my father. I rehearsed the confrontation over and over, imagining the words I wanted to say, the pride I longed to evoke, the acknowledgement I deserved. But each time I swallowed the anger, choosing restraint over conflict, patience over impulse. I reminded myself that a quiet, calculated approach could speak louder than heated words. Conversations with my fiancé and my closest friends were punctuated by shared smiles and hushed laughter, tinged with the unspoken understanding that something remarkable was waiting just beyond the ceremony. The tension built with every fitting, every floral arrangement, every final rehearsal. Subtle hints in my thoughts and conversations foreshadowed a shift in the balance of power, a moment when the years of dismissal and ridicule would be overturned, leaving no doubt who truly deserved respect. Even in silence, I could feel the anticipation coiling around me, a quiet promise that this day would mark more than a union. It would be a reckoning. The rehearsal dinner was meant to be a celebration, a quiet moment before the chaos of the wedding day. Instead, it became the stage for my father's familiar cruelty. As I entered, Polished and proud in my uniform, he raised an eyebrow and smirked, his voice dripping with mockery. "Do you really expect people to take this seriously? A full military wedding? Looks like someone's playing dress-up." Laughter followed from a few distant relatives who never learned boundaries, and a flush of embarrassment crawled up my neck. Every eye in the room felt like it was weighing my worth, judging me through the lens my father had set decades ago. I could feel the sting of old wounds reopening. The countless times I had been belittled for my achievements, overshadowed by my siblings' ease in winning admiration. Anger bubbled inside me, sharp and bitter. But I forced a tight-lipped smile, determined not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I recited my vows in my head like a mantra, steadying myself, reminding myself that this night would not define me. Each sarcastic comment, each dismissive chuckle, only strengthened the resolve simmering beneath my calm exterior. I could sense the eyes of the military guests flicker between discomfort and curiosity, and I held myself taller, letting the uniform become more than fabric. It was armor, a declaration of everything I had endured. As the evening dragged on, the tension built, a coiled energy that hinted at the reckoning yet to come. By the end of the dinner, I felt the first spark of anticipation for what would happen when the world finally saw the strength and respect I had earned, a power my father could never mock away. Later that night, alone in my room, I let the emotions of the rehearsal dinner settle. Anger still hummed beneath my skin, but it was no longer raw and chaotic. It had transformed into something sharper, purposeful. I replayed every word my father had thrown at me, every smirk, every dismissive glance, and I realized that reacting impulsively would only feed his satisfaction. Instead, I needed a plan, something subtle but undeniable, a way to turn the tide without raising suspicion. My mind raced through possibilities, recalling the discipline and strategy that had carried me through years of military service. If I orchestrated a moment that combined precision, symbolism, and public recognition, I could finally claim the respect I had been denied for so long. I didn't yet reveal the details to anyone. This was mine alone. But I began sketching mental blueprints of how the day could unfold. Every rehearsal, every interaction with guests, every small detail became a building block for the surprise. I imagined the shock in my father's eyes, the way the room would shift from condescending chatter to awe, all without a single confrontational word. The anticipation settled in like a quiet drumbeat, steady and insistent, reminding me that patience and careful orchestration could wield far more power than anger alone. For the first time in years, I felt in complete control of the narrative, a private thrill swelling with each passing moment as the wedding drew near. The wedding morning dawned bright and crisp, the kind of day that promised celebration. Yet the tension in my chest was a quiet drum of anticipation. My father hovered nearby, commenting on the slightest details with a smirk that dripped condescension. "Don't tell me you actually ironed every crease. That uniform is a little much for a backyard ceremony, isn't it?" he said, eyes darting toward the military guests assembling in muted rows. My mother gave a nervous laugh, trying to diffuse the edge in his voice, but I caught the flicker of discomfort in her eyes, the same flicker I had seen countless times when he belittled me growing up. I smiled politely, my tone calm, measured, hiding the simmering storm inside. Every word he spat felt like an echo of the past, the overlooked awards, the silent graduations, the praise lavished on my sibling while I remained invisible. Yet now, in this uniform, standing tall among my friends and colleagues, I felt a new rhythm of control. The contrast between his arrogance and my composure was stark. He saw only what he expected, me nervously shrinking, while I held the power he could never grasp. Conversations flowed around me, each comment from him a dagger I met with quiet steel, letting the tension grow rather than erupt. I laughed softly at one of his jabs about the ceremony's overly serious nature, the humor carefully measured, masking the anticipation coursing through me. Little did he know, the day he thought would be another opportunity to mock me would become the exact moment everything shifted. Guests began arriving, smiles and polite greetings filling the air as laughter and the clinking of glasses created the illusion of a perfectly ordinary wedding. I moved among them, exchanging handshakes and hugs, keeping my composure, though my pulse raced with anticipation. Every detail of the day had been orchestrated, every moment carefully timed. and now the first hints of the surprise began to appear. At first it was subtle. A disciplined formation here, a precise salute there, murmurs of attention to protocol among certain attendees. But nothing that would immediately reveal my plan. My mind oscillated between exhilaration and nerves, heart pounding with the knowledge that everything I had worked for was about to manifest in plain sight. I could feel my father's eyes occasionally flick toward the gathering, unaware of the undercurrent building beneath the surface. The contrast between my internal exhilaration and his oblivion was intoxicating. Each step, each careful placement of guests, was a silent prelude to the moment of reckoning. I imagined the exact moment his smirk would falter, the way disbelief and awe would ripple across the room, and the thought made my stomach tighten in a mixture of dread and excitement. Every breath I took reinforced the growing certainty that my years of patience and strategy were about to pay off, and the tension hummed like electricity in the air, waiting for the perfect instant to ignite. The murmurs in the crowd hushed as the soldiers began to line up, one by one, their movements precise, disciplined and perfectly synchronized. I watched from a distance, my heart hammering, knowing every detail had been arranged weeks in advance, the timing, the formation, even the smallest gestures of respect. This was more than just a display. It was a statement, a tangible manifestation of all the effort, dedication, and resilience that had gone unnoticed for years. Each soldier's posture mirrored the rigor I had internalized in my military career, and as they took their positions, a ripple of awe swept through the guests. My father's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of realization crossing his face as he began to sense the shift in control, though he still tried to mask it with feigned curiosity. I felt the satisfaction of quiet power, the culmination of patience and strategy coming to life before his very eyes. Whispers circulated, "Who organized this?" And I allowed a faint, controlled smile, letting them wonder without answering. The contrast between my composed confidence and his mounting uncertainty was almost palpable, a reversal that had been carefully orchestrated for maximum impact. Every salute, every precise step, was a testament not just to military discipline, but to my resolve and intelligence, and the growing awe in the room made the moment feel electric, a perfect crescendo of suspense and vindication. I could see it then. The first cracks in my father's carefully constructed arrogance. His eyes darted across the formation, lingering on each soldier standing at rigid attention, and finally settling on me. The disbelief was palpable, his jaw tightening as the weight of what he was witnessing sank in. Every step I had taken, every plan meticulously executed, culminated in this moment of undeniable authority, and he could no longer dismiss it. I remembered the countless times he had scoffed at my achievements, belittled my ambitions, and lavished praise on my sibling for far less. Now those roles had shifted. The respect of 150 soldiers, lined up and poised in my honor, was a living testament to the discipline, dedication, and character he had always overlooked. His silence was deafening, the smug superiority replaced by a mixture of shock, awe, and unspoken regret. I felt a quiet satisfaction, tempered with restraint, knowing that the humiliation he had inflicted on me for years had been reversed with precision, dignity, and impact. In that moment, I realized that the power I had long craved, the acknowledgement, the respect, the vindication was finally mine, and he had no choice but to witness it. The synchronized movements of the soldiers were mesmerizing, each salute executed with perfect precision, and for the first time in decades, every eye in the room was on me, not my father, not my sibling, not anyone else. A hush fell over the guests, broken only by murmurs of astonishment and admiration. "I've never seen anything like this," someone whispered, while another added, "She really earned that respect." I felt a swell of quiet triumph rise in my chest, a deep satisfaction that was more intoxicating than any applause could provide. My father remained frozen, his mouth slightly agape, the usual smugness replaced by stunned silence. I imagined every slight he had ever thrown at me, the dismissals, the mockery, the favoritism toward my sibling, flashing before his eyes, now rendered impotent against the undeniable authority I commanded. I walked slowly through the formation, each step measured, every glance from the guests reinforcing the reversal of power. The contrast was stark, he, powerless to interfere, I, fully in control, earning respect not because of wealth or titles, but because of discipline, dedication, and strategy. The FOMO I had cultivated among the family and attendees was complete. They were witnessing a woman who had always been underestimated command admiration effortlessly. As the soldiers' salutes held firm, the room seemed to hold its breath, and I allowed myself a fleeting private smile, knowing that this moment would be remembered long after the ceremony ended. As the applause faded and the soldiers filed away, I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe, letting the weight of the day settle around me. I thought back to every slight, every belittlement, every achievement ignored by the very people who should have celebrated me. The loneliness, the frustration, the quiet resentment I had carried for years suddenly felt purposeful, a foundation for the triumph I now quietly enjoyed. I realized that my patience, my careful planning, and my restraint had all led to this moment, a reversal that was both personal and public, subtle yet undeniable. My father's silence, the awe of the guests, and the respect of the soldiers were proof that I had finally been seen, finally recognized for the dedication and discipline I had cultivated over a lifetime. It was bittersweet, knowing that the vindication I felt could not erase the years of neglect, but it reinforced a hard-earned lesson. Composure and strategy often speak louder than confrontation. In that quiet reflection, I felt empowered, validated, and resolved, understanding that karma, patience, and intelligence could transform a history of dismissal into a moment of explosive, undeniable justice. The room buzzed with quiet admiration as friends and extended family approached me, their smiles genuine, eyes bright with respect. "I can't believe you pulled this off," one whispered, shaking my hand with awe. My mother's eyes glistened, a mixture of pride and relief, finally seeing me for who I truly was. My siblings stood awkwardly, unable to hide the shock etched across their face, while my father's gaze dropped repeatedly, guilt and disbelief battling against his pride. Conversations swirled around me, snippets of praise and astonishment reinforcing the reversal of roles. "She's amazing," a cousin murmured, and I felt the weight of years of neglect lift slightly as the truth of my capability was finally recognized. The contrast was undeniable. While I radiated calm triumph, my family struggled with their own reactions, forced to confront the years of underestimation and favoritism. Every compliment, every astonished glance, reaffirmed the justice of the moment and aligned the audience's emotions firmly with my experience, leaving no doubt who had truly earned respect. Sitting alone later that evening, I let the quiet wash over me, replaying every moment in my mind. I thought about the years of feeling invisible, the countless times my achievements were ignored, and the sting of favoritism that had shaped my sense of self. Yet, as I reflected, I realized those experiences had forged a resilience I might never have discovered otherwise. Every humiliation, every dismissal, had become a lesson in patience, strategy, and self-respect. I had learned to value my own worth, to rely on my discipline and intelligence rather than external validation. Today, I had claimed a long overdue emotional justice, a triumph that was both satisfying and bittersweet. And even as I savored the victory, a quiet excitement stirred within me, subtle hints of future achievements, moments where my voice, my presence, and my capability would continue to leave an impression on those who had doubted me. The catharsis settled deep, leaving me strong, centered, and quietly triumphant. A reminder that the path to recognition is often paved with perseverance, cunning, and unwavering self-belief. Months later, life had settled into a rhythm that reflected the person I had fought to become. My career was flourishing, my achievements recognized by colleagues and friends alike, and the respect I had longed for from my family was now quietly acknowledged, if begrudgingly. My father no longer made sarcastic comments. He had learned, silently and painfully, that the daughter he had underestimated was unshakable. Family gatherings became measured and respectful, boundaries firmly established, my voice no longer overlooked. I watched my life unfold with a calm sense of authority, knowing that my patience, strategy, and resilience had permanently altered the dynamics at home. The quiet satisfaction of earning respect without raising my voice, of reclaiming dignity and command over my narrative, left me empowered in a way that was subtle, yet unassailable. I could see the lingering awe in those around me, a testament to what focus, composure, and calculated action could achieve. Life had finally balanced the scales, and in that quiet victory, I felt complete, resolute, and ready for whatever challenges might come next.